Hey everybody, this is one of our Star Trek revisits that we're doing for Patreon. So if you're a patron, thank you for supporting the show. And this is your new content where we're going back and sort of revisiting something. I'll get to that in a second. And if you're not, if this has made its way to the main feed, it's because of the patrons at patreon.com/the Pensky file who support the show. And they get us occasionally revisiting old Star Trek episodes. So 5 years or whatever it's been after TOS was done, we're going back and we're going to talk about The Enemy Within, which was not an episode that we covered on our original watch through. I did it as a kind of just to watch all the episodes. I wrote little blurbs about them on the website, but we did not do a podcast about it. So this isn't really a revisit. It's almost a visit in the sense that it's never happened before. So Clay, how are you? Welcome back to TOS.
I'm good. It's been a while. I haven't watched TOS in quite a while. And I was very happy to get to witness this Nick Cage level performance from William Shatner.
We'll probably get into it, but this is I think you could put this on a list of quintessential TOS episodes. I gave this on the first time through where we didn't really watch it. I just kind of watched it on my own and gave it a little blurb. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I don't know if you were going to agree with that by the end of it. But let's take a break. We will play a clip from the episode, and then we'll come back and we'll break down The Enemy Within.
What's the matter with me? Judging from my observations, Captain, you're rapidly losing the power of decision.
You have a point, Spock?
Yes, always, Doctor. We have here an unusual opportunity to appraise the human mind, or to examine, in Earth terms, the roles of good and evil in a man. His negative side, which you call hostility, lust, violence, and his positive side, which Earth people express as compassion, love, tenderness.
It's the captain's guts you're analyzing. Are you aware of that, Spock?
Yes. And what is it that makes one man an exceptional leader? We see here indications that it is his negative side which makes him strong. That his evil side, if you will, properly controlled and disciplined, is vital to his strength.
All right, so The Enemy Within is the 4th episode, according to Memory Alpha, although I've said 5th and 6th, I think, when I was telling you which episode to watch. It is in the first season. We'll call it the 4th episode, probably produced 4th. First aired on the 6th of October, 1966. Remastered in January 26th of 2008. Written by Richard Matheson. Directed by Leo Penn. In universe dated 1672.1, which is 2266. In this episode, a transporter malfunction splits Captain Kirk into 2 people, one good and one evil, and neither capable of functioning well separately. So the people know my thoughts, sort of. What did you think about this one?
I like this a lot. It's funny because this one is kind of a backdoor hard sci-fi episode, sort of, to sneak into Star Trek, because it's not that I was rolling my eyes, but the initial setup of the evil doppelganger created in the transporter, I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's do this. I'm sure there'll be some doppelganger hijinks. And
this is the first one, though. To be fair, this is the first one that's ever happened in, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
This you could almost say this is a prototypical mirror universe episode. Which
definitely, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was expecting some doppelganger hijinks, and then ultimately they punch each other, and then they figure out a way to put them back together, or they just kill him or something. And I was surprised that the doppelganger stuff kind of stops about halfway through the episode when they capture him, and then it turns into like a really thoughtful analysis of the human psyche, led by a very, very interested Mr. Spock, Spock is really interesting in this episode because he's pretty hardcore about everything that's going on.
Yep.
He's ready to bitch slap Kirk when he's not making decisions, and he's also like really into this problem, which is a problem that I think a Vulcan would be really into.
He personally relates to it. He has that thing about it. He relates to it because he is also a split person, being a child of interracial marriage, basically. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, once they capture him, they kind of get into this discussion about the two sides of humanity and how they have to both coexist and one can't exist without the other. And they have a really great use of the thing that I missed about this show that I don't think any of the other shows have really successfully duplicated, if they've even tried to duplicate it.
Even the 90s shows, or just the modern?
Any of the Star Trek shows, any of the 90s shows, anything, is the 3-point character triangle where you've got Kirk in the middle and you've got Spock and Bones usually on opposite sides. It's a really great dynamic, especially for an episode like this where Kirk literally can't make a decision and he's got two people pulling him in either direction about what to do. But it's really unique in Star Trek, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't tried to duplicate it really. But yeah, overall I thought it was great. I didn't realize it was written by Richard Matheson until the end, which is, great sci-fi writer. Yep. So that explains why this one is of such quality, I guess. It's
another trope of early TOS and into the second season. They farmed out a lot of their scripts to famous sci-fi authors of the time. Obviously with City on the Edge with Ellison is one example. Mm-hmm. Someone who wrote Doomsday Machine is another sci-fi writer, and they've been sprinkled in throughout it. And I think it definitely adds to the Twilight Zone feel of this, like not just because those shows came out at the same time, but they are the episodes just feel like they come from novelists in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like the ideas seem to feel there. And this one, I really like The Enemy Within. I would say that The Enemy Within is like a solid second tier Star Trek episode of the original series. It's in like that B territory, but it's like a really strong B+. It has a lot of tropes that would continue on with it. I think this might be the first episode where Kirk and Spock and McCoy have that kind of dynamic between the three of them. It's one where it introduces a lot of transporter shenanigans. It introduces doppelgangers.
I'm surprised they got to that so quickly. Like when you said it's the 4th episode of the first season, I was like, oh, they didn't waste any time getting into that shit.
No, it was strong. It was strong out of the gate, which is interesting for Star Trek. The other thing that it kind of does is it introduces it's sort of a sloppy philosophical point that it's making about it, where I don't know. I think it requires a little bit of poetic license to understand the dynamic of good Kirk and evil Kirk balancing each other out. Kind of like it's not the cleanest of breaks, and I'm almost surprised that they don't go with some kind of id, superego, and ego argument, because that's what it seems like it is more than
right.
Good and evil. Really, it's like the animalistic id is this Kirk, and then he's the superego, which is the moralistic decider, and then the ego mediates between the two of them. There's only the two of them here, but it also has other classic 60s Star Trek tropes, like the attempted rape of a woman, which is then laughed at by Spock at the final line, where he's like, "Hey, Yeoman Rand, that animal Kirk is really something, isn't he?" And he kind of winks at her. It's like, okay, that's
yeah, that was. I was surprised at how intense of an assault that was for 60s television.
Yeah, it's good. I think Spock's line is worse than the assault, but Spock's line is a brutal, cruel joke that is written as a joke, I think, at the end, but it makes really no sense why he would say it.
Yeah, that line was problematic for a few reasons. Not only because of what Spock said, but like the way that Rand plays it is almost as though she's kind of into bad Kirk, which
she has a line like she dresses a certain way or something, right? When he's interrogating her, she apologizes for looking good or something. She apologizes for the behavior that got her into that position, which is very of its era. I mean, the thing about it to me is, we're in this era of like people sort of asking for progress, right? And like this whole front of things. I think a lot of people don't look back and look at the progress that's been made in this realm. Like it's a strange use of a female character in this episode that would be virtually unacceptable today. Not the plot line, but the way that they handle the way that character goes through it, where she's just kind of a tool for this one, and then is laughed at the end for some reason and sent packing by Mr. Spock. It's just I I think people don't appreciate how far we've come, that this is no longer the situation, and it's a totally different era at this point.
Yeah, but there's still work to do, unfortunately. But
there is. But I mean, this is far worse than anything you're going to see today. Yeah. Like I don't think there's any. There's always some sort of level of work to be done. But like people complaining about this stuff back then actually seem to. There's like a strong understanding or a strong point that's being made about like why this would be a strange problem to have in your television show. It's just its inclusion. Its inclusion seems pointless, and that's the reason that it's strange that it's there at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that stuff. I mean, unfortunately, that sort of treatment of female characters was not even thought about. I don't think at that time as something that they couldn't do. Or shouldn't do, rather. It was viewed through a very different lens. I'm not saying that everybody was going around advocating for workplace assault, but it just I think making a joke out of it didn't seem nobody would have batted an eye really at the time when they did it. But it's an intense scene. And she's got her makeup's all messed up and stuff, and I've seen less brutal attempted rape scenes in shows like today on like an HBO show.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a certain kind of, it makes a certain kind of sense. Like, and I think that they're obviously just going for this sort of animalistic Kirk persona, which I wonder, like one of the main sort of plot, I don't know if it's a plot problem, but like one of the main things that I have about it is that they have a hard time tracking Animal Kirk in this episode for some reason.
Yeah. And they make a lot of strategic blunders, I would say, in trying to track him down.
and they also the structure of it is a little bit strange, where there's a scene early where Scotty explains to Kirk and Spock that the transporter is making duplicates because he duplicates that dog thing, the dog that's wearing a little outfit. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when Kirk and Spock are told this, the actors have a look on their face that makes me feel like they're considering what this could possibly mean. Like the look that the actors give almost implies to me that they know that someone who came up before there is a chance of a doppelganger that's out there. But after that, they still don't know about the doppelganger Kirk, and they're very slow to put it together that that's what happened to him. So I don't really understand why the Scotty scene happens so early in the episode when it should happen. That should be the inciting thing that makes Kirk realize what's going on after Rand has been assaulted. And he's like, what the hell are people talking about? Why are there two of me? And then Scotty comes in and says, this transporter is making duplicates. And Captain, you came through right before I realized that this is what was happening. And he goes, aha, right. That's the situation.
Well, it's really weird with that in a number of ways, actually, because what actually stood out to me was the I believe the evil Kirk comes through during the cold open, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, he comes through before the credits, yeah.
Yeah, so when they come back from the credits, the captain's log kicks in, and the captain's log is being recorded after the fact.
Yeah, it's retroactive, yeah.
Yeah, and because Kirk mentions, he says, at that time, no one on board knew that the transporter malfunction had caused an evil doppelganger of me to appear on the ship. And so, like, it's weird how much they reinforce that everybody know what's going on except for Kirk. It's a strange way to structure it that they put it all out there like that.
They don't really do that often going forward. Most of the logs are done as they are happening, so they feel like they're in a real-time thing. I guess it does make sense that there would be retroactive captain logs. It's just kind of suspicious that the captain tells his log in such a way that it's dramatically exciting for people to listen to. It probably would clarify at the start, like, everything's cool, but we found a doppelganger of me, and he was evil.
Well, back at Starfleet Base or whatever, I'm sure there are guys who are like, have you listened to Kirk's logs? They are riveting. That man can turn that man can turn a drab report into the most interesting story that you'll ever read. Have you ever read anything like that? I was at a library. I had gone down to where the hell was I? Providence, maybe. I think. I don't know. I think it was Hartford. I don't know, one of those states. We were in this big library. It was half Supreme Court, half library, I think, wherever we were, capital of whatever state we were in. And we were looking through the library, and I was going in and I was just checking out some like World War I era stuff, because this was when I was writing Bloody Hell. And I came across all of these military logs that were written by generals and whatnot, like military reports that were like pre-Civil War stuff. So this is like Revolutionary and Civil War era type stuff. And they are so bland. They're the most bland descriptions of the most ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like some of it will be explaining how like one soldier was out of line and decided to accidentally aim a cannon at the leg of one of the lookout towers. That's also the intro to F Troop. But the way they describe it is just private then left barracks at 0800 hours, got key from passed out somebody, went over, accidentally fired off cannon, leg of lookout tower now in ruins. It's like, oh, okay, that sounds like it was really exciting.
Yeah.
But the way that you've written it up feels like a biology report.
But yeah, it's probably a combination of lack of education, so which means a lower vocabulary, and then handwriting that stuff gets tedious. So you'd probably crib notes your like
right.
letters to people.
Well, I was started thinking about it. I was like, man, when you get into World War I era stuff where you've got like hundreds of thousands of men dying very, very quickly, and the people who are running the show are nowhere near this and have no concept of exactly the horrors that are going on. All they're doing is reading these reports that are like statistics breakdowns.
Yeah.
I can see how maybe there was a disconnect between the way that the people, the generals were handling things and the people who were on the ground getting massacred by, storms of flying lead every day.
Sure.
It reminds me of one of my favorite Simpsons gags. I probably brought this up before, from the Treehouse of Horror, Shining, The Shinning. Yes. Where Marge radios in to Chief Wiggum because Homer's going crazy, and she says, what the hell does he say? My husband's gone crazy and he's gonna murder me and my kids. Over. And then Wiggum goes, thank God that's over.
The thing you're talking about, people not understanding the scope, it's probably swung the other way at this point, I would assume, right? Where relatively small conflicts now get so much coverage that the reaction to them is heightened in a way.
Sure. Sure.
For every, drone strike that goes awry and does some horrible destruction, there's a coverage of it that's probably within the scheme of things, the amount of death and everything is relatively low compared to something like World War I, but at the same time, the coverage of it is more escalated.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think that, I guess the other show that this thing introduces is this is the first episode I remember Shatner going full Shatner in a way.
Yeah.
And I think he deserves it here. But what I think balances out his crazy Kirk is that I think his good Kirk is really actually kind of a nuanced performance. I think he's really good as both of them.
It's arguably too nuanced because it took me a while to really understand what was going on, because he plays, unless they kind of do that on purpose to kind of drip out the consequences of this, but his good Kirk, for lack of a better term, is very restrained, and it's only after they kind of get a chance to examine evil Kirk that you realize that he has actually changed his personality into someone who is a lot more demure and not really comfortable making hard decisions and stuff. It's an interesting performance.
Yeah, I think it's intentional that they trickle it out, because it takes a couple scenes for Spock to mention it. Like he doesn't appear and have the scene where he can't make a decision. He seems normal, if weak or something, the first time you see him. And he becomes more and more confused. And my favorite moment is when Spock is trying to get the blood from the dog and Kirk just goes, "Don't hurt him."
Yeah.
Which is a nice little touch. It's just he's completely feeble throughout the entire thing. And I thought that was a clever inclusion because I could see a story where there's just an evil version of Kirk, but Kirk remains the same through it.
Yeah.
And this just takes that and just adds, it makes it much more of an interesting story where he is now a personality that's split down the middle and he is not whole in any sense of the word, any sense of it.
Yeah, I found it surprising because before they really tell you what's going on with good Kirk, they have that scene in the transporter room where Spock just kind of chews him out and gives him the equivalent of like that scene in The Godfather where he slaps him around and says, "You can act like a man."
Yeah.
And at that moment, I was just thinking, wow, Spock is being really intense. I'm not really sure what Kirk has done to warrant this, but as it goes on, it's like, oh yeah, he's a little bit. He's not quite as strong-jawed as he usually is. He's a lot more weak. I hesitate to say weaker, but he
is weaker. I would say he's weaker. Like that's one problem I have. Like I don't really like I understand they're doing it in this poetic license, but I don't really like evil being associated with decisiveness. Just seems strange to me. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say that a weak-willed person would probably be wishy-washy in that way, but it just doesn't seem very clean cut to me. I think the problem with it is that I'm not really crazy about the good and evil dichotomy. I'd prefer if they did the ego, superego, id thing because that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I think I have a feeling it's done this way just because it's cleaner. It's an easier explanation to be like good Kirk, evil Kirk. Although they don't, do they explicitly refer to him as evil? I don't think that they do they?
They might not.
I don't remember. But it's also cheaper because then they'd only have to do 2 of them instead of 3 of them, which would be
right,
twice as expensive.
Which is another transporter accident waiting to happen, and we only have eyeliner for this one guy. That's the only. I'm like I don't know if they just made him up more when he was bad Kirk, but like I never really recognized how much makeup they had on these guys. Because when they were doing those close-ups of especially evil Kirk, he almost looked like they were painting him darker. Mm-hmm. His tan, like extra tan on his face. Yeah.
Well, he's got like extra tan and he's got like a lot of eyeliner on.
Yeah.
So he feels like what Hollywood would do for like a white guy playing an Arab person.
Yes.
And which in and of itself was a little bit problematic. It's like he's very close to looking like Khan. You know?
Yeah, he does. And I mean, they also, it's of an era of television where they shoot people, depending on who you are and what your gender is, they shoot you differently in this. Yes. The women always have the soft focus and the lighting around, the halo effect around them whenever they're in close-up. And Evil Kirk is shot very much like the horror movies from the 20s where he's shot with the light from below him, so his shadows are on his eyes and everything like that. And he looks great. I was watching this. I was really surprised by the production techniques. I'm surprised that none of the modern shows have done an episode that's themed around this era where they shoot it using these production techniques. You know, to just the staging and the framing and the lack of camera movement when they're doing stuff and the lighting and everything like that. Like, I always laugh in these old shows because you never see shadows on the wall in modern production. You know, everything is lit to get rid of shadows. And when Kirk in this, every time people are standing on a set, there's just shadows behind them. And it's like, wow, this is just a different era of TV production. And I feel that they could do a play on it. I think DS9's trouble with the Trials and Tribulations kind of did it, where they kind of mimicked it a little bit. But I feel like a modern show like Discovery could really take advantage of how different it looks by shooting things that way and not doing it the sort of modern style. At least one episode.
That would be interesting. That would be a very hard stylistic change, I think, for Discovery.
Well, they'd have to do some sort of mirror universe where they go to that era or something. Yeah.
Well, ironically, in Discovery, their mirror universe is even lower lit than the regular universe. And
their eyes can't adapt to it.
Yeah, the reason that there's so many shadows in these old shows is because they were just cooking them with lights.
Yep.
Using a lot of lights. And a lot of the modern shows, you know, with the cameras, they don't have to light them as bright, so you can get around some of that stuff. And also they do a lot more of I don't know what the word for it is, but a lot of soft lighting that gets more soft lighting, like just more lights that are just kind of diffused, so you get some of that shadow stuff to go away.
Yep.
And everything's blue now.
Right. and the music, I think, is less impactful. I thought the soundtrack was doing a lot of heavy lifting in this one.
Yeah, the thing that was catching me off guard was the thing that they were using for the heartbeat monitor sounded like The Thing, the theme from John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, sure.
So like they had the music going, the regular Star Trek music, but underneath that they had just like dum 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 dum.
Yep.
And I was like, this is awesome. This is a great soundtrack.
It was so noticeable to me. I was watching it, and when the scenes where the music was playing, I just kind of tried to imagine it without music, what was going on in it, and the music just had so much. Every time Evil Kirk is there, it's just that pounding, like almost tribal sort of like drum stuff that's going on with it. Just the low booming, and it does a lot of heavy lifting, I think, in this show, especially just to separate which Kirk is which, in case you're watching this in a non-remastered 8-inch wide television of the 60s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Recognize which character is which one. The other, just because we did Enterprise recently, we did that episode, Minefield. The difference between Malcolm Reed, who gets a small boo-boo and is like, just kill me, just leave me to die, and Sulu, who's in negative 120-degree weather with his T-shirt on saying, Captain, is that coffee coming down?
Yeah.
Well, they're men of a different era, I suppose.
I was thinking, maybe I missed a line where they explained this away, but why couldn't they just send a shuttlecraft down to get these guys?
They hadn't invented shuttlecrafts yet at this point in the series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's the only reason why they can't do it.
Oh, interesting.
I think the first shuttlecraft is in Galileo 7, which is in the middle of the season. I don't think they had considered the technology to that point, which is kind of strange. You'd think they'd have a backup for the transporter, or Kirk would mention the fact that we should have a backup in case something like this happens in the future.
So what you're saying is Enterprise actually shattered canon by including shuttlecrafts in their show.
In every episode. Yeah, Enterprise went out of their way to spit in the face of TOS by saying shuttlecrafts have been around, and this completely destroys the thing that's going on in Enemy Within.
The gall of those showrunners to do something like that. That
B-plot was apparently added to Matheson's script, and Matheson didn't like the B-plot, although there's only 5 minutes, so I can't think that he's too upset about it. But it's... I guess you do need a ticking clock there. I don't know if you need one, but I didn't think it really hurt it, but it was. I just thought it was that Sulu's tone was just strange. It's this earnestness of Sulu paired with Kirk sitting alone at his desk, going like, "I'll try, Lieutenant." Like Kirk's very serious about it, and Sulu's joking about getting coffee and maybe a couple warm blankets to get thrown down to him as he faces imminent death.
My favorite scene was when Sulu is like on the brink of death, and he calls up the Enterprise, and Kirk answers it like while he's sitting alone in the conference room. And Sulu's like, "I didn't expect to see you, sir. Where's everybody else?" And Kirk's like, "I gave them all the day off." If I was Sulu, I'd be like, "I'm sorry, what? Why is everybody getting the day off? Well, we're freezing to death on this planet. Shouldn't we, I don't know, be working on getting us home somehow?"
A lot of mixed messaging. When they beam them up at the end, they're all being taken away unconscious on stretchers, and then the camera pans up, and McCoy just goes, "Yeah, a little bit of frostbite, they'll be fine."
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure out. So they don't say that they fix the transporter, right? Because they just fix it so they can put Kirk back together.
Oh, but I assume that fixed it. Yeah, but I get your point.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Because does that mean they were just like, well, we know how to fix this now. Fuck it. We'll beam them back, split them up, and then we'll beam them and put them back together, and then we'll ship them off to sick base and put them in a nice warm bath.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's double to the amount of time it takes to transport something because you have to fix everything. Yeah, but go ahead.
I just wanted to say about that B plot. I actually think it's a good addition because without it, I think your conflict about what exactly is happening with Kirk doesn't have a direct actionable thing that needs to be done. So like you split them up and then it just sort of becomes a musing about the differences in the good, even the evil, and should we put them back together, and blah, blah, blah. But adding this B plot gives him an active decision that has to be made, which will require him to McCoy kind of well, I guess Spock and McCoy both kind of lay it out for Kirk, but it adds an actionable element to the drama that I think benefits the story they're telling, because you've got Kirk who can't make decisions, and he has to put himself back together. If he doesn't put himself back together, these guys are going to die, but if he tries, he might also die. So it just adds a little bit more zip to the story that they're telling.
Yeah, you mean by the actionable, whether he has to transport himself with this guy to recombine themselves?
Yeah, well, by actionable I mean like he has a problem that needs to be solved, and he can't solve the problem in the current form that he's in. So he needs to now make a decision about whether or not he's going to try to put himself back together so he can save these people. Without that element, I think it's just them kind of sitting around, and I essentially what it comes down to is it becomes, if they don't put them back together, then Kirk's going to die. And that's probably enough, but I don't think it is as interesting or actually gets as much out of the concept as this stranded thing does, because I don't think it gets you that scene where the three of them are kind of going back and forth with Kirk in the middle.
Yeah.
Because if it's only about Kirk, then I think that the stakes are, they're high, but they're not as high as if there are other people involved.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the pressure it's adding is that they can't do research on whether or not this is going to work. So he has to take the COVID vaccine on himself before the clinical trial is finished, basically.
Right.
And which is fine. I think that it escalates that by adding a little bit of tension. I wouldn't say it dramatically changes things, although I take your point that if it's just Kirk, they can really slow things down, or even if he dies, it's not that big of a deal compared to everyone else dying at the same time.
Because McCoy kind of lays it out where he's like, well, if you don't do it, you're going to die, and if you do it, you might die. So either way, it's kind of
this is it.
It's worth taking the shot. So, and like that's really the only internal conflict there would be if it's just Kirk, you know?
Yeah.
Because if let's say Kirk dies, the ship's in pretty good hands. Nothing is really going to change. But with other people involved, now he has to put himself, his own well-being has to take a back seat to the well-being of his crew. That kind of thing.
Yeah. What you kind of mentioned it at the start. Is there anything going back on these TOS episodes now that you would want to import into modern Trek? You had mentioned something before about now I'm drawing a blank. What was your thing that you wanted to the trifecta of the angel on the shoulder and the devil on the shoulder, which is not really what they are, but it's
concept. Really two angels with different opinions.
Yeah, two angels from different places. Yeah.
Two angels from different districts of heaven.
That's right. Is anything else you'd add to, like, I find going back to TOS after a long time of being away from it and watching the modern Trek kind of charming and insightful in a way as to how unique TOS is from the other Star Treks. And like if I were to do anything, I would hope that Strange New Worlds actually watches more TOS than is obvious that the new modern showrunners feel TOS, I guess. Like I really feel there's a room to update this style of storytelling in a more effective way. Like I was thinking the Rand, I think if you were to remake this episode, there's a way that you can do it where Rand becomes the main character of this story.
Sure.
And Kirk gets beamed up, and it's this modern, I was just drawn to the modern sensibility of like, one of them is this sort of animalistic version of men that is like the version of the men who hate women kind of thing, which is what the animal it is, which is that he's this unbridled rage against women. He's the incel thing. He's that kind of stuff. And the other one is kind of like a cuck white knight version of a person, right? And it's like this, you can really, if you more explicitly make it about male-female relationships, so like the dynamics between the sexes, I think there's a lot of room for commentary there, but Rand needs to be the central character who learns something in that. And I think that you just play the split Kirk off of it in a more interesting way and make it less about this sort of nebulous good versus evil thing we need to combine because everyone has a little bit of evil in them, and that's what gets shit done. And you could turn it into something else that it's a little bit more modern, I think.
Yeah, I think, I think we've said this a billion times, but I don't think that this style of TV is like extinct or anything, or it doesn't need to be, because I think the best of new Doctor Who does this kind of stuff pretty well, where you can, because what I miss from this era is the best of this era are the ones where they present this sort of high concept sci-fi thing, and then they sort of just explore that and tell a tight story with it while exploring some of the themes. And I just don't get that from these new shows. It's a lot more about plot, push everything forward. And I would like the shows to be about something.
Yeah.
More than just the larger, more nebulous something that the season is about. And I also hope Strange New Worlds brings some of that back. And I don't think it's a question of living in the past or anything. It's just a different style of storytelling that I find to be satisfying when it's done really well.
Yeah, it's a different focus of storytelling, really. I think Discovery would probably say it's about the emotional journey of the characters. I would say that they don't do that particularly well either way, even if that is what they're supposed to be doing. But the older shows are just like, it doesn't even have to be a good conflict, because I really like this episode, but I think that the good versus evil thing is really sloppy. Like I don't think it really makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to kind of consider and to wonder about, like, maybe if they had fleshed it out a little bit differently. But I think the same thing for Strange New Worlds. It doesn't have to be this sort of classic sci-fi execution of something. It just has to be more of a focus on this is the issue of this one, as opposed to a modern Discovery take, which is that there's either a very hard sci-fi problem that they're trying to work through, or it's a personal journey story that they're trying to get across. I just want the more contained, small moment of characters thinking about something.
Yeah, and I think you can. Smaller stakes don't mean worse stakes. You know what I mean? Like it's very difficult to come back to a show every season is about some sort of like universe destroying X. Because I feel like that's how Discovery is. That's how Picard is. There's nothing wrong with telling smaller stories and telling smaller stories in an efficient way. Because those bigger stories are just so, I find them very difficult to really relate to. Once your stakes get on the cosmic level, it's really difficult to relate to what's happening.
It all tends to blur together too. The details are so similar to each other. Like if the ultimate detail is it's the end of the worlds and the end of the universe as we know it, it all is just like, yeah, it happened in a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't care about how it got there or whatever. I'm Captain Kirk. Anything?
I'm Captain Kirk.
I want to live. And when you, your goal is a relationship to be somebody who holds you the way that good Kirk holds evil Kirk before he's about to.
Yeah. No one's ever made a meme image out of that. Get yourself a man who holds you like Kirk holds himself.
What'd you think of the? I thought the double work here was pretty effective. It's obvious that they're trying to hide who the other actor is squaring off against Shatner, but I thought it worked pretty well. It didn't look sloppy or anything.
Actor is a generous term.
Sure.
Because they are...
Warm body.
Yeah, it's clearly a stunt guy, and it's so fascinating in these older shows how clearly you can tell who's a stunt guy and who's an actor, because there's just a certain way that they hold their bodies, and also the fact that they don't actually do any acting. Like there's a scene where on the bridge when evil Kirk has now donned the green sarong, whatever you want to call that,
completely disguised himself. Yeah.
Yes. Which Kirk then gets another one of when he wakes up after getting knocked out, I guess. But just so they can do he's the real captain, that thing.
Yep.
But they're on the bridge, and they do a shot where you're behind evil Kirk, and good Kirk is standing in the background looking towards the camera. So you're seeing the back of evil Kirk's head. And the dialogue coming from evil Kirk is like high drama dialogue where he's like, no, it's not me. He's the bad one. But the the stunt guy playing Evil Kirk is just standing very still in like a semi like ready position, like athletic ready position stance. And it's like, yeah, this guy was not told what was happening or what to do. He's just standing there while other people talk at him.
Yeah. Or in the edit bay, they didn't realize they were going to cut these things together. So it's they're not telling him exactly what needs to be done at that point. Yeah, they're basically just glorified like the lighting people, the stand-in people who just kind of stand there to make sure that the lighting works for them and stuff like that.
There's one shot that's you can't get away with this stuff on modern TV because the TVs are so big and the resolution is so good. But when Evil Kirk is on the bridge and Good Kirk comes onto the bridge, they do like a full frontal shot of the stuntman, but his head is turned, like looking over at the turbo lift where Kirk is coming out of. And you can clearly tell it's a different actor. Like you can see his whole face.
Yeah.
Which you could get away with on a much smaller TV, but you can't do that stuff now. Now you got to digitally do that.
Yeah, the only one that stuck out to me was I know that why they did it, but they did a shot where Kirk walks in, I think it's Good Kirk walks into a turbo lift, and they cut trying to stay on the same image so that the Evil Kirk's hand can come into the frame. It seems like that would be a simple thing to do, but they must have moved the camera or something because it's a jarring cut when they cut back together. Yeah.
There's another one actually that I noticed that I didn't go back and check, but I don't think a second Kirk is actually in the shot when they're looking for Kirk, the bad Kirk, in the engine room area, and Spock walks towards camera out of frame, and then Kirk jumps down from whatever the thing he's on top of. There's definitely a cut there, and I'm not sure why. Maybe, I don't know if it was might have just been a production thing or something. I don't know, but
didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, it was just weird. Maybe it was just like I don't know. Who knows? Lost to time probably. But yeah, as far as their strategy for hunting this guy down, I don't know if broadcasting to everyone over an open channel that there is a second evil Captain Kirk running around on the ship is really a great idea.
The communication, my favorite communication thing is when he assaults Rand, right? And that other crewman comes in and Rand is like, call for help. And the guy runs to the communicator. He's like, hello, this is Ensign Terrence B. Dickhead. And he gives this whole introduction, right? And gives Kirk time to run over and karate chop him in the neck before he can say anything. It's just like, you should just yell help into the thing. You don't need to explain who's talking on this end of the telephone.
Yeah, it was so strange, though, because like as I'm watching this, I'm thinking like, I feel like the strategy here is to very quietly gather a bunch of security guys, tell them what's going on, and then you, as real Captain Kirk, stay in your room while the other guys just go and hunt down the only other Captain Kirk on the ship and capture him. Not open a channel, let the bad Kirk know you're coming after him, and let him know exactly what you're going to do by making sure your guns are on stun. It's an interesting choice.
Gentlemen, you're looking for someone who looks just like me, but has 2 pounds of concealer on their cheek, which is covering up a horrible gouge on their face. Yeah.
Yes, that which it doesn't quite match. I accidentally
I'm a fall
left
color.
my hand. I accidentally left my hand on my face when I got into the tanning booth this morning. So
I know. It's
also imagine if you were a crew member on this ship, right? You're doing your job, you're minding your own business, and then all of a sudden, boop, boop, this is Captain Kirk. I'd just like to inform everyone that there is an evil doppelganger of me running around in this ship. And aside from that, go about your business, I guess.
Yeah.
Like that, the amount of stress and panic that would sow among the crew.
The pilot coming on. We're running a little low on fuel, but I think we're going to make it to the airport.
We've lost one engine. The other engine is it's making a weird noise, but I think we can make it.
We should be fine with one. Yeah, he does.
That's why we have two, ladies and gentlemen.
He's not one Kirk's not one to sit around in this. I think that really the biggest plot hole, besides if you want to consider the good evil split, is just the ease with which evil Kirk runs around, and good Kirk is not really thinking that he should do the lost child strategy of just stay in one place so that everyone can find him. The other thing that I think is kind of early Star Trek is much more militaristic, and you see that in the Kirk and Spock interaction, where Spock's like, "If you fucking show weakness, the crew's going to mutiny. You can't do that. Like, don't show anything." But also in the evil Kirk accomplishes a lot because he just tells people to give him their gun, and they're like,
right,
and he gives it to him, and then he karate chops them, and that's the end of it. It's good moral for question your superiors or question authority is the moral of the story.
Yeah, even like right after that announcement where Kirk is like, "Oh, by the way, there's an evil one of me. Be wary about anyone you see who looks like me and who maybe has some marks on their face." That one guy runs into evil Kirk and he's like, "Yeah, whew, man, it's hot in this ship. Can I? You know what? Give me your gun. Yeah, don't worry about why. Just give me your gun." Okay, Captain. Punch.
Karate chops him out right there. I know, it's good. It's a real. It's the same. Rand is also similarly compromised there because she is like, it's the modern men in power, like the boss or whatever. You have an undue amount of control or pressure against her. Like, there's no, she can't say no to her boss, basically. And even though she knows that bad intentions are coming or whatever, it's something that they don't really explore here. It's just something that evil Kirk constantly uses to get ahead on people, is that everyone will listen to him.
That was also a weird scene too, when after he steals the green sarong and he runs into to Yeoman Rand, and he's like, hey, just want to say I'm sorry. Yeah, there was this evil doppelganger who, has scratches. He even scratched me. Weird thing. He, same exact place so he could look like me. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. By the way, do you mind if I drop by your place at like 9:30 tonight? Mm-hmm. No reason. Just want to, talk about stuff.
See you there. Yep.
Also,
green sarong.
I didn't know her name. Yeah. This is just held in place by one clip. I don't know if that...
Well, it's funny, after he knocks out Good Kirk and steals the sarong, Good Kirk went back to his quarters and got another green sarong.
He got another one. Also, names are interesting to me. Like, what names stand the test of time, which ones kind of fade and which ones come back and whatnot. For instance, like, do you know anybody under the age of 35, or let's be generous and say 30, named Jason?
I do know one Jason of that age, yes, but I take your point, yes. Yeah.
But like nobody's named Jason anymore. People just don't know. When we were kids, every third kid was named Jason.
I would say Matt has been a drastic drop off. I don't know any young kids who are my kids' age who are named Matthew, but Matthew was the number. There were 55 million Matthews when I was growing up.
Yeah, Matt's a classic. I'm surprised to hear about that one. But I didn't realize Yeoman Rand's name was Janice.
Yeah, Janice Rand.
Yeah. And B, I don't know anybody younger than my Aunt Janice who's named Janice.
Yeah, Janice that's
a name that just disappeared.
Linda. My mother's name is Linda, and that was very popular. A lot of mothers were named Linda, and Linda's no longer a name. Yep.
Not a lot of Helens anymore.
No, we're just like a world of Declans and Emmas now at this point. So there'll be Declan Rand and Emma Rand coming forward. Yeah. Poor Yeoman Rand.
Did you see? I saw a meme that was going around that it was someone named Chad who's like, "Hey, could you why my name? My name is perfectly fine. Why don't you go after like Brant or something, or like Declan or someone that's like clearly it's a douchebag name?
Bennett.
Chad is totally fine.
Yeah.
Bennett? Would you say Bennett?
Bennett is a good douchey name. Sorry to all the Chads out there. I just listened to Carlin's. Carlin had that bit about soft names make soft people kind of thing.
Todd. I don't know a lot of young Todds.
Yeah, that was the Carlin. Hi, Todd. I'm Tucker.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Tucker. I'm Todd. Soft names make soft people. I bet 10 out of 10, Joey, Johnny, and Jimmy are going to kick the shit out of Todd, Tucker, and Kyle, or whatever he says. That's it. I guess we're done with The Enemy Within. Thank you very much for listening to it. What are you going to give this one, Clay? I'm sticking to my 4 out of 5 for this one. I think this is a good, solid TOS episode.
Yeah, I agree. I would say this is a 4. Honestly, I think it's a 4, but I forgot to throw this in when you brought it up earlier, but I'm going to continue on my unpopular opinion about best Star Trek episodes and say that I think this is a better Star Trek episode from an outside sci-fi writer than City on the Edge of Tomorrow is.
Oh, really?
Because I
'cause
think
it's Star
this is
Trek.
I think it's a more Star Trek episode. I think it deals with very Star Trekky things in a very Star Trekky way and does it very well. But I don't need to rehash that. If you're listening through this for the first time, you'll get a lot of it when we cover that episode.
Yeah, go back and listen to City on the Edge or listen to it for the first time. Yeah, but I think even you would have to admit that the central emotional punch of City is more effective than this central emotional punch. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with this. This is more of a Star Trek episode than City on the Edge. I would remove all the Star Trek trappings, and City on the Edge is a better story, I guess, would be my
Yes,
my
I would agree. Yeah.
But that's it. Evil Kirk is no more. Good Kirk has remained, and he's now become one, and he's just kind of lukewarm Kirk, I guess, middling Kirk. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patrons, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you for listening and supporting us. And obviously, people new, patreon.com/the Pensky File. If you want to go there and support the show, much appreciated. And this won by 1 vote over the All Our Yesterdays was the other one. So maybe we'll do TOS in the future. I'll put it up on Patreon poll if that's the case. And I guess that's it. 4 out of 5 for both of us. It's stuck the same way through. Good quality episode, well worth watching, and a good intro to Star Trek, I think. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.